Today is Democracy Day, an annual holiday to celebrate democracy as a system of government and commemorate the victory of business mogul and politician Moshood Abiola in the June 12, 1993 presidential election, which was eventually annulled by then military president General Ibrahim Babangida. The president has been paying tribute to the heroes of the nation's democracy whose sacrifices laid the foundation for the country's uninterrupted democracy in the last 24 years. In his first broadcast to the nation since he assumed office as president.
This is the 6th Democracy Day being celebrated on June 12, and 2 weeks into his administration, President Bola Tinubu in his first statewide broadcast explains that the day is a reminder of the roles played by a group of Nigerians that set the country on its current path.
We can easily recall the sacrifice and the martyrdom of Chief MKO Abiola, the custodian of the sacred mandate that was so cruelly annulled. Every day on this day, down the ages, we will recall the several heroes of democracy, such as Kudirat Abiola, wife of Chief Abiola, who was brutally murdered while in the trenches fighting on the side of the people. We remember Pat Alfred Rewani, one of the heroes of our independence struggle, and Major General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua, retired, who was silenced by the military junta while in pursuit of democracy.
Speaking on the election that brought him into office, the president believes democracy provides multiple opportunities to achieve one's dream.
It is only natural that even as those who won and experienced victory in various elections are elated and fulfilled, those who lost are disenchanted and disappointed. But the beauty of democracy is that those who win today can lose tomorrow, and those who lose today will have an opportunity to compete and win in the next rounds of elections.
Following the outcry that greeted his Inauguration Day speech on the removal of fuel subsidy, President Tinubu admits it's difficult on the masses, however assures that Nigeria will be better for it.
I admit the decision will impose extra burden on the masses of our people. I feel your pain. This is one decision we must bear to save our country from going under and take our resources away from the stranglehold of a few unpatriotic elements. The government I lead will repay you through massive investment in transportation, infrastructure, education, regular power supply, healthcare, and other public utilities that will improve the quality of life.
The president is also charging all that have been elected into various offices to see their election as a sacred trust from Nigerians.
In particular, those of us who have been privileged to elect into public office at various levels in both the executive and legislative arms of government must recommit ourselves to offering selfless service to the people and delivering concrete democracy dividend in accordance with our electoral promises.
According to President Tinubu, the recent harmonization of the retirement age for judicial officers is meant to strengthen the rule of law while assuring that more reforms will follow in the judiciary.
After his address to the nation, President Bola Tinubu inspected the parade and watched a silent drill and band display by the military in a special ceremony organized by the Presidential Guards Brigade at the Presidential Villa. The low-key event was also witnessed by a number of important personalities, including some governors. Our State House correspondent, Gloria Umezuke, reports.
The opening of the special ceremony to mark the 2023 Democracy Day celebration and 30 years of the June 12 anniversary began with brief salutations at the saluting dais. Dignitaries present to witness the ceremonial parade include former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Ambassador Babagana Kingebe, governors of Lagos and Imo, service chiefs, among other top dignitaries. President Bola Tinubu is received by the quarter guard. Before he conducts an inspection of the parade. As Nigeria's president, it would be his first inspection of guards on Democracy Day, the fifth since June 12 was officially declared a public holiday in 2018. Guests were also treated to a combined silent drill display by the armed forces and police, involving complex marching sequences. Then the cultural display. And 3 hearty chairs. In this low-key but colorful ceremony, there are no official speeches. However, there are a few thoughts for Nigeria's democracy.
June 12 represents a deliberate attempt to enthrone the sanctity of democracy and due process as far as elections are concerned. And the President and Commander-in-Chief, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is regarded as one of the most critical persons in the struggle for the attainment of that mandate.
Democracy itself is a learning process for we, the third world countries. So we continue to learn, like in other climes, that the spirit of a sportsman must be deployed. And it is either you win or you lose. When you win, you celebrate. When you lose, you wait for another time.
It all started in Lagos with Hope 1993. As we speak, there are a series of activities taking place in Lagos, and we're thankful that indeed there is no alternative to democracy, and we just need to continue to nurture it, continue to build on it. Whatever our differences are, let's all clean it up.
Former Vice President to the presumed winner of the June 12, 1993 presidential election urged Nigerians not to forget the lessons of June 12.
Abiola is no more. We can't bring him back. We should never forget. We should be inspired by his courage. We should be inspired by his steadfast commitment, and we should be inspired by his willingness to sacrifice his life, which he has, and for which I think the country will forever be grateful.
Efforts to strengthen the nation's democracy is undoubtedly one of the key tasks of President Tinubu, who has highlighted as one of his strong convictions in his speech the need to uphold the struggle to secure freedom and diminish the poverty struggle across the country. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
And here are some words from state governors, many of who are also commemorating the day for the first time. But we start with one of the returning governors. That's the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, who is also saluting the courage of leaders at the forefront of ensuring Nigeria's democracy was not truncated. Governor Sanwo-Olu believes what's most profound about this year's celebration is the fact that for the first time since 1999, we have at the helm of affairs of this country one of the foremost leaders of the June 12 struggle. Cross River State Governor Basi Otu is asking the people of the state to support his administration to succeed as the nation marks the 2023 Democracy Day. In his goodwill message, Governor Otu reminded the people of his administration's People's First agenda and assured them of his commitments to the economic growth, prosperity, and security of all nooks and crannies of the state. Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara believes the significant improvement recorded in the nation's democratic journey has helped to reassure the people of government becoming effectively accountable, functional, and vibrant. He pointed out that the hope-reassured subject of the 2023 Democracy Day celebration is a reassurance of the prospect of a united, secure, and prosperous Nigeria. In his Democracy Day message, Imo State Governor Hope Uzodimma acknowledges the fact that democracy might not have solved all the challenges facing the country. A lot of milestones have been achieved since the return of democratic dispensation in 1999. Governor Uzodimma called on Imo people to rededicate themselves to the efforts to strengthen and sustain democracy, irrespective of imperfections inherent in the system. We'll strengthen the people's faith in democracy by rewarding their votes with impactful and life-changing projects is the commitment made by the Enugu State Governor Peter Mba on the occasion of Democracy Day. He says his government will not rest until it achieves the promises of growing the economy, creating jobs, addressing insecurity, as well as infrastructural deficits. For the Niger State Governor, Umaru Bago, it's time to look over the years since the country returned to democracy and do things differently to bring about the desired results. He believes the time has come for the leadership at all levels to depart from the usual rhetoric and seek pragmatic solutions to the challenges of governance in order not to destroy our hard-earned democracy. The message from the governor of Katsina State, Diko Rada, on Democracy Day is for political leaders in the country to remain committed to the Nigerian project. According to him, the present set of Nigerian leaders must strive towards making the country's democracy a model for other African nations. Meanwhile, pro-democracy group, the National Democratic Coalition, NADECO, is urging the president to work towards returning Nigeria to the path of federal constitutional governance upon which Nigeria secured her independence. NADECO says this is what most ethnic nationalities, civil society bodies, opinion leaders, and others had vigorously campaigned for in the last 30 years. In the statement, the organization notes that while Nigeria practiced federal constitution, there were spectacular and visible developments by the regional and national governments with their economic policies lifting the people out of poverty. NADECO then urged President Bola Tinubu to use his coming into office to return Nigeria to the path of sanity. In part two, after the break, more on Democracy Day and a look at the struggle 30 years after the landmark June 12th presidential election. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live from Channels Television. A reminder of our top stories. The president pays tribute to the heroes of democracy in the country as Nigeria commemorates the annulment of the June 12, 1993 presidential election won by Chief MKO Abiola. The Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces also inspects a military parade by the Guards Brigade, his first since becoming president, in a special ceremony to mark Democracy Day at the Presidential Villa, Abuja. Eminent Nigerians, including elder statesman Chief Edwin Clark, call on leaders and citizens to build on lessons learned in the democratic struggle to deepen the nation's practice of the system. And Silvio Berlusconi, the former Italian prime minister who bounced back from scandals and corruption allegations, has died aged 86. Now we're staying with the anniversary of the June 12, 1993 presidential election, where the federal government has been urged to consider recognizing Chief MKO Abiola as former president in appreciation of his contribution and sacrifice to Nigeria's democratic development. Now, this is part of the takeaway from a lecture series which held in Lagos today in celebration of the Democracy Day. Our correspondent, Timothy Crown Aderigube, reports.
The June 12, 2023 commemoration takes different coloration across Nigeria. Here in this hall in Lagos, it is marked by a lecture, the 22nd in the series organized by the Oodua People's Congress. With the theme, June 12, 1993, Identity Politics and the National Question, 30 years after. Organizers bring men and women of thought together to brainstorm on how to make the best of the date, now known as Nigeria's Democracy Day.
What is more surprising is that some of the so-called leaders who have failed the people were prominent in the struggle for the actualization of the June 12 election. However, after they got to power, they have become so distant from the aspirations and yearnings of the people.
Among the call by speakers at this event is for the revocation of the annulment of the election, which the Social Democratic Party candidate Chief MKO Abiola won.
There should be a deep annulment of June 12 election. Wow. Posthumous declaration and recognition of MKO Abiola as a past president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It's important.
Some of the ways the organizers believe that Nigeria's democracy can thrive is for the 1999 Constitution to be amended.
As we celebrate the 30th anniversary of June 12, 1993, Election Day, we must understand the core values of the struggle. We must understand that late Abiola mandate stands for justice, freedom, equity, liberty, and sustainability of democracy tenets. If we do not review or overhaul the 1999 Constitution, I don't believe Nigeria can move forward. Unless we embrace regionalism and let the federating unit develop at their own pace, Nigeria may find it very difficult to realize its lofty dream.
It's been 30 years since the election was annulled, 25 years since MKO Abiola died in controversial conditions, 5 years since former President Muhammadu Buhari conferred on him posthumously the highest national honor, and 5 years since June 12 was declared Nigeria's Democracy Day in place of May the 29th. Timothy Crown, Aderibibe, Channels Television News.
As Nigerians mark another Democracy Day, a former Federal Commissioner of Information and elder statesman, Chief Edwin Clark, is asking politicians to imbibe the true tenets of democracy. Speaking to Channels Television, Chief Clark says with the increasing number of election petitions across the country, Nigerian politicians are yet to learn lessons on democracy. He then appealed to senators-elect to ensure the emergence of a Senate president in line with the zoning arrangement announced by the ruling All Progressives Congress.
The lesson which you learn from Democracy Day today is that we should behave as civilized people. Where elections are held, only very few people will go to court. Where your opponent, if well defeated and he lost a day, he should congratulate you. Today people are singing about President Jonathan that he voluntarily handed over. I'm not discussing that because certain things happen. Abiola died because he stood for democracy. He won election freely in the whole country. And today, people have not learned that lesson. That's why I do not believe that we are sincere in whatever we are doing on Democracy Day. Perhaps we can concede to those who fought during that time.
And still in the spirit of Democracy Day, in honor of the late Chief Moshood Abiola's patriotism and other heroes of the struggle, here's a background to the journey to Democracy Day 30 years after.
It was the morning of the June 12, 1993 presidential election in Nigeria, the first since the 1983 military coup that ended the country's second republic. The election was the outcome of a transitional process to civilian rule spearheaded by then military ruler Ibrahim Babangida.
Was generally seen to be free, fair, and peaceful.
Unofficial results of the election, though not declared by the National Electoral Commission, indicated a victory for Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola of the Social Democratic Party, who had defeated Bashir Tofa of the National Republican Convention. The winner of the election was thus never declared, as the poll was annulled by the military ruler, citing electoral irregularities.
However, there was in fact a huge array of election malpractices virtually in all the states of the Federation before the actual voting began.
The annulment and arrest led to protests, leading to the resignation of IBB after installing an interim civilian government led by Chief Ernest Shoneko.
I think nearly 80% of the entire population of this country did. So he's our man. We want him as the president of the nation, that's all.
As a result of Abiola's fight for justice to recover his mandate, the then head of state, General Sani Abacha, who had sacked the interim government, jailed Chief Abiola in 1994 after he declared himself the president of Nigeria.
The people of this country went to polls on Saturday, June 12, 1993, and without let or hindrance chose me as their president. Didn't they?
Despite calls in Nigeria and abroad for his freedom, Chief Abiola was not released and eventually died in prison on July 7, 1998. Abiola's support in the June 1993 presidential election cut across all geopolitical zones. By the time of his death, he had become an unexpected symbol of democracy. In recognition of that, former President Muhammadu Buhari apologized to the family of the presumed winner of the June 12, 1993 presidential election for his travails after the election, conferring the title Grand Commander of the Federal Republic on Abiola with a declaration that June 12 is Nigeria's New Democracy Day.
Marking the formal official federal government recognition of June 12 as National Democracy Day.
Honors were also bestowed on Abiola's running mate, Babagana Kingibe, the late human rights activist Gani Fawehimi, alongside other heroes of democracy.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Nigeria's Eurobond surge following a suspension of CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele. That's on Business News. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Let's now head to the nation's capital, where Linda Akigbe is standing by to give us the very latest at our Abuja studios. Hello, Linda. Happy Democracy Day.
Hello, Ayokunle. Happy Democracy Day to you too. The consensus building ahead of tomorrow's inauguration of the 10th National Assembly appears to be reaching its climax. The chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum, Governor Hope Uzodinma of Imo State, has expressed confidence that the party's choice for the Senate presidency, Senator Godswill Akpabio, will emerge winner. In a chat with State House correspondents after a meeting with President Bola Tinubu, Governor Uzodinma, alongside Senator Akpabio and former Kano State Governor Abdullahi Ganduje, said that the immediate past president of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, has agreed to work for the emergence of the APC-preferred candidate for Senate president. Senator Akpabio, on his part, promised to work with all senators, irrespective of political affiliation.
A few days after receiving their certificate of return, senators-elect and members-elect of the House of Representatives gathered at the State House for a meeting with some leaders of the All Progressives Congress. This was the earliest meeting of the party leadership with would-be members of the 10th Assembly. Much later, the party announced the choice of Senator Godswill Akpabio for Senate President, Senator Jibrin Barao for Deputy Senate President, Honorable Tajuddin Abbas for Speaker, and Honorable Benjamin Kalu for Deputy Speaker. Protests greeted that decision. To resolve the crisis, the leadership of the party had several meetings.
We need to deepen our consultation so that we carry with us as much of those who are going to decide as who becomes Senate President.
The meeting succeeded in some instances.
Abbas and Carlo remains not only the consensus candidate of the ruling APC party, but Abbas and Carlo is also the consensus candidate of majority of members of the opposition cut across the PDP, the YPP, the APGA, the Labour Party, the NMPP, and the ADC party.
President Bola Tinubu also had consultative meetings with some of the lawmakers in his efforts to get them to buy into the party's choice. Eventually, the Progressives Governors Forum prevailed on lawmakers from the southeast to support the preferred candidates.
People are entitled to have aspiration. But because we are practicing partisan democracy, it is always assumed that loyalty to the party will always prevail. As it has to do with the Senate President and the Deputy Senate President, the ruling party with more senators elect, All Progressive Congress, have preferred and recommended Senator Godswill Akpabio and Senator Barao. And the Southeast Caucus, the 15 senators elect, met this afternoon, and we already agreed that we will vote according to the recommendation of our great party.
As it stands, the party believes it has done enough to get the federal lawmakers to vote for the preferred candidates, and they're hoping for victory during the inauguration of the 10th Assembly.
It's cheering news for some Nigerian students as the president has signed into law the Student Loans Bill in fulfillment of a promise he made during his campaign. The federal government spokesperson, Mr. Dele Alake, who made the announcement this evening, stated that the funds will be domiciled in the Ministry of Education and will only be assessed by indigent students of tertiary institutions. The Student Loan Bill was sponsored by the Speaker of the 9th House of Representatives, Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila, and passed the third reading at the House 2 weeks ago.
The President, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, signed into law the Students' Loans Bill. And that Students' Loans Bill, you all know what it entails, what it connotes, the meaning. This is a promise made during the presidential campaign by the then candidate, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that he would bring back the issue of the student loans issue onto the front burner. And today, that promise he made has been kept. He has just signed that bill into law, which henceforth will allow or enable our indigent students to access the federal government loans to fund their educational pursuit or career. And this is how it's done in other developed climes, other developed societies all over the world. So this is a boom to our youths, to our students nationwide. Of course, there are prescribed qualification parameters, and that is the proof of indigenship of whoever is to be a beneficiary. And other prescribed parameters will be there. Of course, there are committees to be set up, the members of committee drawn from various bodies to superintend over the efficient and proficient disbursement of this facility. Yeah, the bill takes effect immediately, but the procedures will be worked out. The committees to superintend and all of that are spelled out. There is an amount, not in terms of the naira and kobo, but in terms of percentage of revenue of the federation. Yeah, and that is also in the bill.
To security issues, the kidnapped parish priest of Holy Trinity Catholic Church, Kaku, in Kauru, local government area of Kaduna State, Reverend Father Jeremiah Yakubu, has been released by his abductors. This was confirmed by the Chancellor of the Catholic Diocese of Kafanchan, Reverend Father Emmanuel Okolo, who said that the priest regained his freedom this evening. He, however, did not disclose if ransom was paid for before the abducted priest was released. Reverend Father Jeremiah Yakubu was kidnapped from the parish rectory in Kauru local government area at about 11 p.m. on Sunday. The incident occurred barely a week after a Catholic priest was killed in Benin City, the Edo State capital, by persons yet to be identified. That's all from Abuja. Now to Millicent from Business News.
We apologize for that slight hitch there. On Business News tonight, Nigeria's international bonds surged today following the surprise weekend suspension of the central bank governor, Godwin Emefiele, with investors betting his removal will allow President Bola Tinubu to better pursue his promise of resetting monetary policy. Nigeria's international debt instrument jumped the most amongst emerging market pairs at the opening on Monday, with its long-dated dollar bonds rising to the highest since January. The notes maturing in 2051 rose nearly 3 cents on the dollar to as high as 73.45, the biggest gain since April. Analysts say the outcome of Mr. Emefiele's removal should be that Nigerian bonds strengthen, while benchmark interest rates may rise as the nation's assets become more attractive to foreign investors. In his Democracy Day address earlier this morning, the president has labeled the decision to remove fuel subsidy as a necessary move in order to ensure growth of the nation's economy. He noted that for growth to occur, Nigerians must make sacrifices, one of which is the current challenges experienced as a result of the removal of subsidy. President Tinubu assures Nigerians that their sacrifices will not be in vain and adds that his government will move to soften the impact by investing in infrastructure as well as other sectors of the economy. Meanwhile, the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, CPPE, has urged the president to reciprocate the thoughtful stance of the Nigeria Labour Congress by quickly coming up with measures to reduce the pains of the fuel subsidy removal. In a statement released today by its CEO, Dr. Muda Yusuf, the economic think tank pointed out that the pains inflicted on citizens, especially the vulnerable in society, were really severe, and a strike would have further worsened an already difficult situation for the people. The CPPE recommends that as part of direct intervention measures for removal of petrol subsidy, the new administration should allow competition in the importation of petrol products, implement appropriate fiscal measures, especially on import duty, introduce incentives for private investors, amongst others. As Business News tonight is back to you, Ayo.
Many thanks, Melinda. Coming up next on the news at 10, the former Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi dies at the age of 86. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Former Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, who bounced back from sex scandals and corruption allegations, has died aged 86. According to Italian media, he died at the San Raffaele Hospital in Milan. In April, he was treated for a lung infection linked to a previously undisclosed case of chronic leukemia. A flamboyant billionaire media tycoon, Berlusconi first came to office in 1994 and led 4 governments until 2011. Here's Samit Puzi with more on this and other international stories in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Silvio Berlusconi, the former Italian Prime Minister who bounced back from scandals and corruption allegations, has died at the age of 86. He died at the San Raffaele Hospital in Milan, where Italian media gathered today as well as well-wishers. A few hours ago, his body left the hospital in a hearse. In April, Berlusconi was treated for a lung infection linked to a previously undisclosed case of chronic leukemia. A flamboyant billionaire, media tycoon, Berlusconi first came to office in 1994 and led 4 governments until 2011. He led the centre-right Forza Italia party, which went into coalition under Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni after elections in September. He had an unconventional style, here keeping then-Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, waiting in front of the media while he took a phone call.
Silvio Berlusconi era soprattutto un combattente.
Reacting to the news, Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said Silvio Berlusconi was most of all a fighter. He was a man who never feared to defend his beliefs. Vladimir Putin also paid tribute to him, calling him a great friend. His funeral will be held in Milan Cathedral on Wednesday. Ukraine says it has liberated 4 villages in the southeast of the country in the first victories of its much-anticipated counter-offensive. Officials reported on Monday that the national flag is once again waving over Storozhova in the Donetsk region. Reports and footage from the weekend show similar scenes in neighbouring settlements, as well as nearby Makarivka. The villages are relatively small, and Moscow is yet to confirm any retreat. On Saturday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that the counter-offensive had begun. At least 10 people have died and 25 others are in hospital after a wedding bus crashed in an Australian wine region. The passengers were returning from a wedding at a winery on Sunday night in Hunter Valley, a popular spot for wine tourists, when their coach overturned. Police have charged the 58-year-old bus driver with 10 counts of dangerous driving, which resulted in death. They said they were still in the process of identifying the dead. The newlyweds weren't reported to be on the bus.
All of us know the joy of going to a wedding, a chance to celebrate dear friends and family. They are some of the happiest times that you can have. For a joyous day like that in a beautiful place to end with such terrible loss of life and injury is so cruel and so sad and so unfair. People hire a bus for weddings in order to keep their guests safe, and that just adds to the unimaginable nature of this tragedy.
Thousands of residents in India's western state of Gujarat have been evacuated from their homes days before a powerful cyclone is expected to make landfall. The cyclone, named Biparjoy, is expected to make landfall between Mandvi in Gujarat and Karachi in Pakistan, with a maximum sustained wind speed of 135 kilometers per hour. India's Weather Office has advised fishing communities to halt operations and the evacuation of people from the coastal areas of Saurashtra and Kutch regions of Gujarat. The US billionaire philanthropist George Soros has handed over the running of his $25 billion financial and charitable empire to his son Alex. The Hungarian-born financier said his son had earned it in an interview with the Wall Street Journal. Since the 1990s, the family's wealth has been directed to support democracy building in dozens of countries. But in recent years, the 92-year-old former hedge fund manager has become the focus of anti-Semitic conspiracies. And around 13,000 people have been evacuated in the northeast of the Philippines as the country's most famous volcano, Mayon, continues to ooze lava. People living within the permanent danger zone, or 6-kilometer radius, fled to shelters. Known for its perfect conical shape, Mayon started spewing lava last week, but evacuations only began over the weekend as volcanic activity intensified, setting off alerts. More people could be evacuated if Mayon's unrest intensifies in the coming days. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Thanks, Simon. It's now time for sports news. Delta State Governor Sheriff Oborowori has commiserated with his Bayelsa State counterpart Doye Diri over the death of supporters of Bayelsa Queens Football Club in an auto crash in Ikwale in Ndokwa West local government area of Delta State. No fewer than 5 persons or members of the supporters club died and 7 others were injured while on their way to Asaba for the final game between Delta Queens and Bayelsa Queens. Meanwhile, 3-time African champions, the Super Eagles of Nigeria, have commenced training ahead of the Sunday's 2023 Africa Cup of Nations qualifying match against the Leon Stars of Sierra Leone in Monrovia. 21 players were involved in the training session this evening at the Mobolaji Johnson Arena in Onikon, Lagos, as they get set for the June the 18th encounter at the Samuel Doe Stadium in Monrovia. And celebrations are still on in the city of Manchester as the citizens celebrate their treble with an open-top bus parade through the city centre, with thousands watching on in the rain this evening. The start of the parade was delayed to about 7 p.m. due to adverse weather conditions and localized lightning storms. Manchester City's Champions League triumph on Saturday in Istanbul followed a Premier League and FA Cup victories. And that's it on Sports News. I'm Jeffrey Zonga. Ayo is back to you.
Many thanks, Jeffrey. And the main news again. President Bola Tinubu has paid tribute to the heroes of democracy in the country as Nigeria marked the annulment of the June 12, 1993 presidential election won by the late Chief MKO Abiola. We'll leave you with this throwback interview by the chairman of Channels Media Group, Dr. John Momo, with the winner of the June 12, 1993 presidential election, Chief MKO Abiola. That's the news at 10 tonight. Many thanks for watching. I'm Ayo Tunde Balogun. Do have a good night.
Good day, sir. We've been all out today. What have you to say about the massive solidarity support that you have received today from the people? I reckon you must have gotten the feedback about how people have gone all over town saying it's you or nobody else.
Well, it is very gratifying. I've always known that the events of the last few weeks have, in fact, enabled people to make up their mind a lot more firmly. In fact, it has increased tremendously the public support that I have in the country. Nigerians are ready for democracy. Nigeria have elected their president, and Nigerians are not prepared to go for another election. The truth of the matter is that you do not have 2 sunrises in one day. Even in Africa, the sun rises only once a day, and that is the way it is. The people have made it very clear that that is what they want. And I'm sure the purpose is to let government know that the people are very serious in what they are saying.
Do you have any fears that some members of the SDP might give in to the new political arrangement that is being proposed?
There's nothing like that. You see, given to what? What do they give in to? There's nothing to give in to. The election was pronounced fair, free, fair, and peaceful by the international observers and by the government-owned observers themselves. So what is there to give in to? As a matter of fact, they do not see any reason to prolong the democratic process anymore. And the SDP as a party is very clear. The executive committee made it very clear last week. The meeting in Benin too has made it very, very clear, even doubly clear, that there's no question of the party going back. To go back is to tell the Nigerian people that we are not a serious party. We are a very serious party. We understand, a few officers who are not happy about the result of the election. But a few officers cannot be more important than the generality of Nigerian people. 14 million Nigerian people voted in the last election. more than voted at the National Assembly election. And as a proportion, probably more than are voted in the United States election, the presidential election. So that in itself is a massive mandate. And I have 58.9% of the votes. I won in 20 states, and I won the 1/3 of the votes in 28 out of 30 states and at the Federal Capital Territory of Abuja. There's nothing else.
Do you think the president will backpedal?
Well, it's not a matter of backpedaling. It's a matter of a misunderstanding. He was not accurately informed. For example, there were talks about bribes there were allegations of bribery to NEC. I've already said anybody with proof of that allegation should go to court. Bribery of an electoral officer, of a public officer, is an offense, is really a felony under the law of Nigeria. The matter should be taken to a criminal court. And secondly, there were allegations that the turnout was low. That has been debunked. There were more voters during the presidential election than during the National Assembly elections. So that is not true either. There were allegations that the judiciary is being put into jeopardy or into ridicule. We were able to prove that neither of the two candidates went before any court. It was an illegal organization supposedly being sponsored by the government itself that took matters to court. That has nothing to do with us. There were allegations that large sums of money were spent, 2.1 billion naira. That was not true. I've denied it. The other candidate has denied it. In any case, there is no upper limit to the expenditure that can be incurred by any candidate in the presidential election or in any election under the law of Nigeria. All these are just trumped up charges, excuses as it were, not reasons.
What message do you have, as a last question, to your teeming supporters across the country?
That there is plenty of hope, that there's no doubt at all that the president and the military government will leave office on the 27th of August. And there might be need to meet and discuss some details. And I'm always ready and willing to discuss details. This is not a civilian versus military situation. A preponderant majority of the Nigerian military and their family voted overwhelmingly for me in the last election. So there was no question of the military. There are quite a few, just a few officers who probably are unhappy about the changes. We will give them all the assurances they need. There is room for every Nigerian, especially the top officers who have been trained at tremendous cost to the taxpayers of Nigeria. The list of people which people have alleged have been prepared by me for dismissal or retirement is not true. I have no such list. We need all the soldiers we have in the Nigerian army, especially the senior ones who have been trained at considerable cost to the taxpayers of our country.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.